Hi Tom, welcome back to 10 by 6.
Hi Jace, thanks ever so much. Lovely to see you. Thanks for tuning in and watching, people.
Thank you. Yeah, absolutely. And do you know we're celebrating our year of 10 by 6 this month?
Really?
Yeah, we started last April.
How fabulous. Well, so thanks again for those of you that follow us on the YouTube channel, on Dorset Eye's YouTube channel, and the special Facebook page that we set up now for 10 by 6 films. So thanks for tuning in. Hope you're finding our films interesting.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, what a week it's been. We still haven't got to a position where our Prime Minister considers that it's appropriate to resign, not only his position as Prime Minister, but his position as MP. But apparently we now live in a society in which lying politicians to the public, lying in the Commons, lying to their colleagues, just lying is an accepted behaviour. And not only lying, but of course breaking the law and then telling us that we should wait for numerous reports, and when those reports or when those institutions come back with their conclusions or their fines, nothing happens, nothing changes. And this links into something that we're going to do today, which is, I suppose, focused in the olden days upon people who were Russian spies or double agents, people who spied for other countries. But now we can really hone in on the fact that our own politicians are absolutely guilty of this, and we're talking about traitors. And in a minute we're going to go through the traitor test, and we're going to see how our current government fits with a number of questions. But first, you're going to give us, Tom, the timeline of events that's happened in the last 6 or 7 days, just to set the context for something that for some people may have seen a straightforward press release of the fact that Boris Johnson and Rishi Sunak were fined, along with Carrie Johnson and a number of others, actually isn't quite straightforward after all.
Well, thanks, Jace. Yeah, I mean, extraordinary sequence of events that's happened in the last few days. That it's quite, in fact, easy to see that they're not an unconnected sequence. So I'm just going to run through a little timeline of this sequence of events. Just before I do, I should point out, based on what you were just saying there, that clearly we have a Prime Minister that believes the rules don't apply to him, and of course that was exactly what his Eton tutors wrote to his dad, Stanley Johnson, when he was a student at Eton. There's a letter has been circulated around social media for a while now. It was a letter from Johnson's tutors at Eton, basically saying, that he's he believes the rules don't apply to him. So I just want to run through this little timeline of events, and hopefully people will see that they are not unconnected, and in fact probably in all probability very coordinated. So in this little sequence going back sort of 5 or 6 days, we know that Boris Johnson, first of all, to kick off the sequence, was informed that he was going to receive a fixed penalty notice. So he had several days advance warning, from what we understand, that was the case. Next thing on the sequence of events is he has surprisingly and unexpectedly jumped on a plane and gone to Ukraine for a photo opportunity with Zelensky. And the next thing that happened is...
Can I just interrupt here? Can I just say, another interesting point that's been made about his trip to the Ukraine is that he wore a normal breasted suit, shirt and tie, and yet when he went to Liverpool on a visit, he had to wear body armor protection. Now, what does that tell you about how dangerous Liverpool is in relation to how dangerous his trip to Ukraine was. And what does that also tell you about how the corporate media have been getting us completely entranced by the situation, the terrible situation in Ukraine? And yet Boris Johnson will visit a foreign city that's currently at war in a very relaxed style compared to when he goes to his own cities in his own country.
Yeah, where of course he is despised, and the Tories are generally despised for a whole history of things that they've done to the people of Liverpool.
Yes.
But yeah, so the next thing that happened on this sequence of events was a strange caricature of a very young and handsome looking Boris Johnson, version of Boris Johnson, appeared on social media, looking like St. George, in a suit of armour with the cross of St. George and a sword, and looking about 15, 20 years younger than he is, appeared. And a hashtag, I think it was "Be Brave Like Boris" or something along those lines, went with that. And that was tweeted out and sent out by the Tory bots, the fake profiles that they use across social media platforms. And then the next thing that happened was that the scandal about Rishi Sunak's wife was leaked, became a big story, and obviously that's been very damaging for Rishi Sunak. Rishi Sunak, of course, who was the favourite, the bookie's favourite, and probably, you know, the Conservative Party's favourite to replace Johnson when the time comes. But his opportunity for that has been severely dented by this leak. Sunak has now announced he wants an investigation. He's carrying out an investigation into who carried out that leak. I suggest he doesn't have to look that far.
But you could argue, Tom, though, couldn't you, that given Boris Johnson's reputation over years, that the revelations about Sunak and his wife will actually increase his esteem within the Tory party, because the more criminal and corrupt you are, surely, the better chance that you now have of becoming leader.
Yeah, I guess you're right, but I mean, it is widely regarded that you know, this has damaged his reputation, and of course he himself has this issue of being, you know, of his US green card as well, and all that sort of thing. So it doesn't play well for Sunak, for sure. The next thing that happened is that Johnson then announced the fixed penalty notice and, you know, his grovelling apology and refusal to resign. And then a load of Conservative MPs, or those that felt they wanted to speak out, pretty much all Johnson supporters, those close to Johnson, spoke out in favour of him not resigning, saying that he shouldn't resign. And they pretty much identically gave two reasons. Each of them gave these same two reasons. One was that we're at war, pretty much. Well, we're not at war, are we? Ukraine is at war with Russia, and we're sort of involved in that, in piling in the weapons. But we're not at war. I mean, it's ridiculous to say that we're at war, and that's not a reason for the Prime Minister to resign. That's ridiculous. I mean, if you could arguably say we're always at war, we're always bombing somewhere in the world anyway. And the second reason they each gave, which was it struck me as so bizarre, was they said there's no obvious replacement. There's no obvious replacement. They're basically saying there's nobody in the entire Conservative Party that they view as able to do the job of Prime Minister other than Boris Johnson. That's quite an extraordinary admission. You know, and that includes Sunak, that includes Truss, that includes, you know, Raab, that includes Gove, that includes anyone else. They're saying there isn't anyone. What an extraordinary admission. Now, why would they say that if it's not just a coordinated effort to, you know, and planned effort to ensure that Johnson stays there? And they're very pointedly indicating that they don't see Sunak, you know, the favourite, as viable now.
But there are rumours, Tom, before you move on to the final point, that they have been sounding out Keir Starmer.
Yes, I'm not surprised. Yeah, I'm not sure what the transfer fee is, but he's doing a fair job for them over in the Labour Party, to be fair.
Yes, he is.
And then the final thing in this sequence is today's pretty predictable and depressing, appalling attack on asylum seekers and refugees, and this disgusting policy announced by Priti Patel and Boris Johnson today. And obviously Boris Johnson wanted himself to be announcing it, where they're going to be sending asylum seekers and refugees to Rwanda at extraordinary cost to the taxpayer, and you know, in something that's completely against people's human rights and any kind of humanitarian view of how to treat people. And it's fascinating how, you know, we're seeing a government that's opened up you know, homes for people from Ukraine, who are of course predominantly white. For people leaving war-torn Ukraine, we're welcoming them and providing them with homes. Not enough, but still the government are saying that, and that's the message from the media as well. And yet, if you're a black or brown asylum seeker or refugee from a war-torn part of the world in Africa or, you know, Syria, or Afghanistan, etc., you know, you're liable to be shipped off to Rwanda. It's a disgusting racist policy, but of course announced to play up and pander to the right-wing racists that support the Tories. So, but that entire sequence of events, starting with Johnson knowing that he was going to have this fixed penalty warning, fixed penalty notice, and going to have to announce that. You could imagine that entire sequence of events in going to Ukraine, the St. George thing, be brave like Boris, the leak on Sunak's wife to destroy him, Tory MP saying there's no alternative but Boris, no other replacement, and then this predictable attack on asylum seekers. That whole thing, if you think back 5 or 6 days ago, when Johnson and the team around him, the team of political advisors around him, knew what was coming, and they obviously went, we're in deep doo-doo here, there's going to be massive clamour for you to resign. So this is our strategy. This is our point-by-point strategy over the next 5 or 6 days. It's very easy to surmise that everything that I've discussed there on that timeline of events was planned.
Yes. Yeah, well done, Tom. Well done for identifying that and taking us through it. It is very scary times, isn't it? We've got to a point now where I think for almost nothing surprises us. And of course, that is a very dangerous place to be, because it means that people can do so much more than they used to be able to do before the public, you know, was bellowing for change or bellowing for justice. I think, you know, for a lot of the public now, they're just, you know, apart from on social media, and a lot of them just given up. You know, it's just an acceptance that there's nothing that they can do. They're powerless. We call it democracy, but it doesn't mean anything to them. And the vote is effectively fixed by one establishment party or another establishment party every 4 or 5 years. And your best bet, you know, the message seems to be, is just be born, grow up, grow old, and die, and just keep your head down, which is a very, very sad state of affairs that we live in. So let's move on then to compare what you've just been taking us through, and all the other things that they've done over the years. And let's look at this Traitor Test that was sent to Dorset Eye, and we published a month or so ago. And what we're going to do for the viewers is that we're going to take it in turns, aren't we? We're going to run through a set of questions, and the other one of us is going to be the government answering those questions. And obviously, given the fact that, you know, whereas governments in the past would have been embarrassed, they would have probably resigned in some instances. They wouldn't have had the ability to cover things up like they have now. Whereas now it's all about distractions, and as I said before, it's about living in a world in which the most extreme things compared, you know, if we go back to the 60s, 70s, 80s, the most extreme things can happen, and politicians refuse to take responsibility.
And can I just say, Jace, can I just add to that? What it is described by an economist a couple of years ago, just pre-pandemic, as this 10 years up to then of Conservative government has seen the biggest transfer of wealth from the poor to the rich in the history of this country. That's what this government has represented. And as you say, whenever that's highlighted, what they do to hide it and obscure it, them and their media accomplices, their billionaire-owned media accomplices, is to throw dead cats and culture wars at us.
Yes.
Try and divide and rule over us and make us argue amongst ourselves.
And there's a lot of evidence to suggest as well that the planning for all of this took place either in the lead up or during the economic crash of 2008. This was seen by the sociopaths. This was seen by the establishment groups across the planet as a massive opportunity to suck as much wealth as they could from the nations across the world into a very small pocket, a very small group of people who would then have almost entire control of how the planet operated. And one of the things that they found hugely inconvenient, which means they've spent loads and loads of money and time on propaganda, is climate change. These corporations see the threat of climate change as a massive attack on their balance sheets. So they're doing everything as much as possible to try and either distract people or to undermine the scientific evidence. So future generations are going to have this generation of especially right-wing politicians to thank for murdering the planet.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, so if we go to economic traitor, I'll be the questioner, and you can be the government for the first part, and then we'll switch.
Okay.
So these questions, if you answer yes to any of them, you can be classified as an economic traitor to this country. Do you know, or will you ever assist in or enable the sale of UK assets to foreign hedge funds, multinationals, oligarchs, or states? How do you plead?
Guilty.
Guilty. Well, there's not much more you can do on that front, bearing in mind, again, the volume of information and the volume of evidence that we have. Do you know?
We've been doing that throughout the 12 years, clearly.
Yeah. And beyond, it has to be said, since the 80s. Do you know, or will you in the future intentionally facilitate the accumulation of the nation's wealth among a tiny minority, the super rich?
Yes, we pretend that that we're doing the opposite, but that's to mask the fact that that's exactly what we are doing. Yeah.
Yeah, and the World Economic Forum was set up with the intentionality, along with Bilderberg, to ensure that happens as effectively and as efficiently as possible. Have you ever, in a professional political capacity, facilitated, enabled, or contributed to the privatization of natural resource monopolies within the United Kingdom?
Is the Pope Catholic?
Do you use, or will you ever use, tax havens, foreign intermediaries, offshore funds, or free ports to avoid paying taxes?
No, we never ever do that until we're discovered to have done exactly that, when the Panama Papers and other similar things are discovered. So the answer is no until proof comes out that the answer is yes.
Yes, of which there's lots. Do you intend, or have you ever intended, to bribe or in other ways reward UK politicians directly or indirectly in order to gain commercial advantage for yourself, your clients, or your employers?
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago.
Have you organised, orchestrated, or facilitated the allocation of public funds to friends, colleagues, cronies, or political donors without due process, scrutiny, or fair competition?
Only at weekends. And any day that ends with a Y.
Okay, obviously, and obviously any point during a pandemic.
Particularly, yes.
Would you, in a professional, political, personal capacity, sacrifice the well-being of any or all of your fellow citizens to further your career or increase your wealth?
What an extraordinary allegation. Yeah.
Do you allocate or oversee the allocation of pension funds or other savings in the form of shares, loans, or investments to companies, corporations, or industries which facilitate intrusive surveillance, repression, or war?
That's exactly why we all became politicians and part of this government, to do exactly that. Yeah, why else would we become politicians?
Seems to be everyone in the Tory parties are Putin. Do you vote for, defend or excuse low taxation for corporations or the rich?
Only because they give us large amounts of money that keep us in power. So there's a clear rationale for it. I think when there's a clear rationale for criminality and corruption, then it can be excused.
Excellent. So what we have so far is firm conclusions that economically your government are all traitors. So over to you now.
In the second half, then this is under the category of a social traitor. So I'm going to now ask the questions. Jason will play the government, and if he answers yes to any of these, then we can class the government as social traitors. So, first question is: have you ever, in a private or public capacity, deliberately misled or lied to the British public?
Oh, no.
Liar.
I don't like the term liar. Can you leave the chamber, please?
Oh, I'm not allowed to call you a liar here in our own little chamber. Okay. Next question: do you exploit or otherwise harm through deceit or knowing manipulation any part of this nation's population for your own advancement or self-interest?
In terms of advancement of my self-interest, I do wonder whether you are confusing the fact that we are all self-interested, and therefore we're all selfish, and therefore we never have any compassion, empathy or consideration for the well-being of others.
I hadn't considered that, but you've stated your position fairly accurately, so thank you for that. Next one: have you ever used the law, either as a client or a legal professional, to silence or punish whistleblowers?
I've never heard of Belmarsh.
Okay. Do you, in your professional or political career, suppress, cover up, or hide information which it would be in the public interest to reveal?
Can I just ask, do you know how to spell democracy?
Yes.
Can you spell it for me, please?
DEMOCRACY.
No. It's not. It's PLUTOCRACY.
Ah, I didn't realize that. Okay, thank you. Well, that's. I think it was about time that we updated as a nation, that we updated and had a more modern view of democracy. So yes, thank you for making that clear.
My pleasure.
Our lovely government. Have you organised, orchestrated or facilitated the sending of British forces at risk to their or others' lives to participate in immoral or illegal wars?
If I hadn't, I would stand out like a sore thumb, and not liking to look like a sore thumb, I'd rather look like a clown, of course.
Okay. Do you claim or assert that some people in this country are superior to others because of their ethnicity, skin colour or place of birth?
It's a very difficult question to ask, to answer, I should say, or perhaps it is even a difficult question to ask, bearing that you're white and you're obviously superior to about 15% of the country. So it's a tricky one, isn't it? I mean, I've got brown-skinned people in my cabinet. What does that say? Apart from the fact that they probably, apart from the fact that they probably should be in Rwanda.
Yes. Well, thank you for making that clear. Do you claim or assert, verbally, in writing, or by any other means, that some of your fellow citizens are less deserving than others of healthcare, education, or housing because of their lack of wealth, their family or social background, their ethnicity, skin colour, or place of birth?
I've only got two things to say about that: privatising the NHS and student loans.
Yes, both important policies of this government. Do you believe that your fellow citizens are inherently lazier or less deserving than the citizens of some or all other countries?
Well, we're certainly more obese. We're certainly fatter. We're the second fattest country in Europe. So they're bound to move slower and be able to do less. Draw your own conclusions.
Okay. Do you claim or assert that poor people are poor because it's their fault?
Of course. Of course. We're genetically superior. We went to Eton, don't you know?
Yes. Do you support the death penalty for your fellow citizens?
It's a difficult one to answer. It's not really the fact that I support the death penalty. It's whether they suffer the amount of pain due to them before they expire. I quite like the idea of hung drawing quartering. It creates a social event. People can come out in the parks and they can watch the hanging for the starting point, and then they can watch the dragging by the horses and in 4 different directions, and their body and their limbs being torn apart. I'm getting quite excited while I'm talking about it. We'd better move on.
I presume you're already thinking of G4S as the private company that would be in charge of those ceremonies and events.
It depends on how much they price themselves. I mean, if they're too expensive, then obviously we'll just look for the local butchers.
I understand.
Community, bring it to.
Yeah. Do you intend in any future election to vote for a government or political party which imposes austerity measures on public services?
Austerity is an overused term. I prefer to use the word normal.
Yes, as it has become. We live in constant austerity under this government, never-ending austerity. And the final question here is, will you vote, this is you personally, not representing the whole government, will you vote in the next or any future general election, local or by-election, for the Conservative and Unionist Party, otherwise known as the Conservatives, the Tories, or the party of landed gentry and the super rich?
Silly question.
Yes, indeed.
I think did you ask the question above? Do you intend at any future election to vote for a government or political party which will continue or avert privatisation of the NHS? It would never be overt. It would never be overt. It's more important than religion in this country. It must almost be by stealth, almost always be covert. We must always lie, 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 and lie again.
Absolutely, yes. Sorry, I missed that.
And until your flexible friend is required.
Absolutely. Sorry, I missed that question out. But of course, people that say that this government wouldn't be privatising the NHS, partly absolutely oblivious to the fact that you have been, and secondly, seem strangely unaware that you, the members of this current government and current cabinet, actually wrote the books on how to privatise the NHS. They've actually written the books. So yes. Thanks for writing those books to show exactly what you're intending to do and now doing. Okay.
Better to bring it out into the public, lie, be jovial, and people pass on by. When you hide things and it all comes out, it's a bit of a shock. So no, we prefer to do it in a different way, a different form. Right, now I can give up my very, very awful Thatcher impression and we can turn the tables again. So, environmental traitor. Do you allocate or oversee the allocation of pension funds or other savings in the form of shares, loans, or investments to companies, corporations, or industries which cause species depletion, global warming, or other environmental harm?
Absolutely, yes. And we see no reason to encourage pension funds, public or otherwise, to divest from those planet-destroying industries such as fossil fuel industries, because of course those fossil fuel industries are involved in giving us lots of money.
Yes, of course. But on the other side, of course, we'll have nice little photo shoots in a country park in Sussex with the missus and Wilf, to give the impression that we actually give a shit.
Absolutely.
Do you own shares in, own or occupy a senior management position within any company or organisation which pollutes the air, water or land in the United Kingdom?
It's quite possible that I do. You'd have to ask my personal financial advisor, who will obviously tell you that it's none of your business.
One of the things we noticed around here in South Dorset is at election time, the farmers have these great big boards, vote Drax. And, you know that behind these great big boards, it's just a cover really for them to be able to continue to pump toxins into the local rivers. And Richard Drax, of course, will turn a permanent blind eye. Do you own shares in, own or occupy a senior management position in any company or organisation which is significantly contributing to global warming?
I refer the honourable gentleman to the answer I gave some moments ago. Of course we do.
Do you own shares in or occupy a senior management position in any company or organisation which trivialises, denies or encourages inaction in regard to climate change?
Again, no, until it's discovered that we've been doing that for decades.
Yes. Do you personally trivialise, deny or encourage inaction on species depletion, on climate change?
Well, again, that depends on your definition of species depletion. You know, I've read things saying that there are millions of species that have recently become extinct because of man-made climate change. But I don't know if the scientists have got, you know, qualifications to be scientists and to say that. Who knows?
And I'm extremely pleased with your language there. You're extremely politically incorrect, man-made, as opposed to human-made. I applaud you for sticking to your conservative values.
Thank you.
Would you vote for a political party or a government which trivialises, denies or encourages inaction on species depletion or climate change?
Well, of course, I would vote for myself and our own government. So yes, of course. Yeah.
Well, the results are in, and, and thanks to Luke Andreski for sending this in. But yes, we do.
I should just say what an incredible. I mean, Luke has kindly provided some content for a number of Dorset Eye articles, and each of them is absolutely fantastic, fascinating, a real sort of different way of looking at things. And this is a really, you know, super piece of work from Luke, a fabulous set of questions.
Yes.
If you were going to come up with a set of questions about whether you or your government acts in a way that's against the interests of our own country, you couldn't come up with a better set of questions, really. It was really good.
Yeah, and can I also point out, I mean, firstly, the results are in, and this government are as guilty as hell, but also just pointing back to Luke in terms of the fact that he has a number of books that he's published: Ethical Intelligence 2019, Intelligent Ethics 2019, Short Conversations During the Plague 2020, and Short Conversations During the Storm 2021. And his most recent book is Our Society is Sick, but Here's the Cure. And I think a solution-based approach is what we exactly need now from the independent media, as we've said on a number of occasions. You know, we can identify the problems until, you know, we're stiff and 6 feet under, but ultimately the future generations are going to want solutions to problems that they're going to need all the help they can get, even from dead people, if you follow me. Right, thank you so much. Right, okay, so this government, having pulled the wool over our eyes, harassed us with the untruth, not taking responsibility, sucking up money from the big group into the little group, being racist, sexist, homophobic, transphobic, while all the while manipulating the public consciousness. They are guilty as charged. And yeah, again, thank you for Luke for sending in the Traitor Test. Thank you, Tom, for taking us through the timeline of events, which I suspect very few people have actually logically followed in the last 6 or 7 days. There ends another episode of 10 by 6. Thank you so much, mate.
Thanks, Jace. Thanks, everyone, for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. Take care.